Welcome to the True Guy Globe Brief Updates. Subscribe and press the bell icon for updates. The news flashed across Tehran, rippling through the city's early morning haze. Radios buzzed, phones lit up, and conversations in cafes and offices all turned to the same topic. It was a headline that no one expected, and yet it seemed to capture the city's imagination in an instant. Iran seeks deeper ties with the Philippines. The words were printed in bold, impossible to miss, and repeated on every major news channel. Headlines praised Filipino resilience, calling it a model for partnership. Editorials spoke of admiration, and columnists wondered aloud about the possibilities of a new friendship. For many, this was a puzzle. Why would Iran, a regional powerhouse with centuries of history and influence, look to a small Southeast Asian nation thousands of kilometers away? The question echoed in parliament halls and on street corners alike. This wasn't about oil or military alliances, it was something more human, something that went beyond economics or politics. It was about values, about the search for inspiration in unexpected places. The story unfolded not in official statements, but in quiet diplomatic circles. Behind closed doors, diplomats whispered about a new approach, a different kind of relationship. Iran's interest wasn't in resources or strategy, but in the spirit of the Filipino people. Their warmth, their resilience in the face of hardship, and their sense of community had left a deep impression. The reports all pointed to one man, Amir, a senior Iranian diplomat just back from Manila. His journey had been more than official business, it had been a personal discovery. Amir's dispatches were different, filled with stories of warmth, resilience, and community. He described how strangers became friends, and how every encounter seemed to reveal a new layer of kindness. He wrote about kindness, about a nation whose greatest asset was its people. He saw families sharing what little they had, children laughing in the streets, and neighbors helping one another without hesitation. His words captured the attention of leaders back home. Ministers and advisors pored over his reports, struck by the sincerity and hope in his observations. This story began not with a treaty, but with a change of heart. Amir's reflections by Manila Bay became the seeds of a new vision for diplomacy. It's about how simple human connections can reshape the way nations see each other. A handshake, a shared meal, a moment of understanding. These became the building blocks of a new relationship. Amir, trained in negotiation and power politics, discovered a different kind of influence. He realized that true diplomacy sometimes means listening, learning, and letting go of old assumptions. He found it not in grand gestures, but in everyday acts of kindness. It was in helping an elderly woman cross a busy street, or joining a local charity event, that he saw the real power of connection. Through Amir's eyes, we begin to understand the surprising bond between two very different nations. The vibrant streets of Manila and the bustling avenues of Tehran suddenly seemed a little closer. Sometimes the most powerful diplomacy happens far from the negotiating table. It happens in laughter, in shared stories, and in the willingness to see the world through someone else's eyes. And sometimes, it starts with a single, unexpected headline, one that shakes a city, and maybe, just maybe, changes the course of history. On the world stage, Iran and the Philippines seem worlds apart. Iran, a Middle Eastern heavyweight, the Philippines, a vibrant archipelago. The idea that Iran would admire the Philippines challenges our usual view of power. Iran saw in the Philippines a different kind of strength, resilience, community optimism. This wasn't about alliances or strategy, but about shared values. Both nations have histories of resisting foreign influence and value family and hospitality. Iranian observers saw in Filipinos a reflection of their own cherished values, expressed with unique joy. The connection was subtle, but profound. It showed that a country's true wealth is in the character of its people. The story of Iran's admiration for the Philippines is a quiet testament to this idea. It's a narrative that unfolds in simple human moments. Sometimes, the heart of a country is its greatest strength. Amir was a seasoned diplomat, trained in logic and protocol. Years of experience had shaped him into a man who trusted procedure over instinct, and who believed that every situation could be managed with the right set of rules. Assigned to Manila, he expected a routine posting, formal meetings, economic talks, nothing more. He imagined a predictable schedule, filled with official dinners and carefully worded statements, where surprises were rare and personal connections were secondary. He saw the Philippines as friendly but strategically minor. In his mind, it was a country on the periphery of global affairs, important but not essential. A place where his presence would be noted but not transformative. His first impressions confirmed his expectations: chaos, poverty, and political challenges. The bustling streets, the noise, and the visible struggles of daily life seemed to reinforce his belief that this was a place defined by hardship and instability. He viewed the country through a lens of analysis, focused on national interests. Every encounter, every conversation was filtered through the question, how does this serve my country's goals? Kindness and community spirit seemed irrelevant to diplomacy. He dismissed the warmth of the people as mere cultural nicety, not something that could influence policy or outcomes. Amir attended receptions, shook hands but remained distant. He kept his emotions guarded, his interactions polite but impersonal, always maintaining the professional distance expected of his role. He saw smiles but didn't understand their strength. The genuine hospitality of the Filipinos puzzled him, as if it were a code he had never learned to decipher. He was ready for formalities, not for what the Philippines would truly offer. He believed he was prepared for every scenario, but his preparation was limited to the world of officialdom. He wasn't prepared for the disarming power of a simple gift, or the resilience he'd witnessed. The small acts of generosity and the unwavering spirit of the people began to challenge his assumptions in ways he hadn't anticipated. Amir arrived as a diplomat, a representative of his state. He wore his title like armor, believing it would shield him from the unpredictability of human connection. He had no idea he was about to be transformed, not just as a diplomat but as a human being. The city, with all its contradictions, would soon teach him lessons that no training could provide. Sometimes the most profound lessons come from the most unexpected places. It is in the unplanned moments, the small gestures, that true understanding begins to grow. Amir's journey was about to begin. He was stepping into a world far richer and more complex than he had ever imagined. A world that would test not just his skills, but his heart. And it would change everything he thought he knew. The Philippines would become more than just a posting. It would become the place where Amir discovered a new way to see the world, and himself. One weekend, Amir visited a local market, leaving his official world behind. The Quiapo market was alive with color, sound, and scent. At a fruit stall, an elderly vendor offered him a slice of mango. No charge, just a welcome. Amir, used to formal exchanges, was taken aback. This simple act of generosity struck him deeply. It wasn't a transaction, it was a connection. In his world, gifts had motives. Here, kindness was given freely. He saw the people around him as individuals, not just a crowd. He wandered the market, witnessing families, friends, and strangers supporting each other. This was the living heart of the nation, something no briefing could capture. As he left, the taste of mango lingered, a symbol of unexpected discovery. Amir's perspective was beginning to shift. Amir's official duties continued, but his approach changed. In a meeting with a senior senator, he asked not about policy, but about family and values. The senator spoke of Kapwa, the Filipino sense of shared identity. He described resilience as a lived reality, not a slogan. Their meeting stretched far beyond protocol, delving into history and culture. Amir listened, not to strategize but to understand. He learned more in that conversation than from any briefing. He realized politics was shaped by deep cultural heritage. Amir began to look past titles and talking points. He found that genuine interest in people led to openness and respect. The barriers of diplomacy dissolved. These conversations changed his mission and his heart. Diplomacy, he learned, was about understanding the soul of a nation. To understand more, Amir visited a rural village outside Manila. He was welcomed by the village captain, not with ceremony but with warmth. Over a simple meal, villagers shared stories of tradition, hope, and family. Amir saw farmers working together, children playing, neighbors helping neighbors. He witnessed bayanihan, community support without expectation of reward. This was the Kapwa spirit in action. The strength of the Philippines was not in its capital but in its communities. It was built on connection, cooperation, and belonging. Amir realized the nation's foundation was its people, not its government or economy. This visit was a revelation. He saw the true source of the nation's admirable spirit. Sometimes the greatest strength is found in the simplest places. During Amir's stay, a powerful typhoon struck the Philippines. He watched as devastation unfolded, but so did resilience. Neighbors rescued each other, shared what little they had, and began rebuilding. Volunteers arrived, not waiting for orders. Even in loss, people smiled and comforted one another. This was bayanihan on a national scale. Resilience here was active, hopeful, and communal. Amir saw a country that saved itself through social bonds. This was a form of power more enduring than any army. Iran knew resilience, but here it was infused with hope and joy. Amir's reports to Tehran focused on this inspiring response. He called it a national treasure, one the world could learn from. Amir's experiences forced him to rethink diplomacy and power. He'd been trained to see strength in GDP and military might. But in the Philippines, power was rooted in connection and kindness. The warmth of the people built trust and turned negotiations into real conversations. This soft power was more effective than coercion. It built bridges, not walls. Amir began to prioritize relationships over objectives. He saw that alliances built on friendship were more durable. Cultural exchange was essential, not secondary. His reports described a strength based on resilience and dignity. Iran began to see the Philippines as a source of inspiration, not just a partner. Amir's transformation was sparking change back home. On his final day in the Philippines, Amir found himself drawn once more to the vibrant heart of Manila, the Quiapo market. The air was thick with the scent of spices and ripe fruit, the sounds of laughter and bargaining echoing through the crowded stalls. It was a place where life pulsed with energy, and every face told a story. He sought out the fruit vendor who had once offered him a simple mango. This time he thanked her, not just for the sweetness of the fruit, but for the lesson she had unknowingly shared. In that small act of kindness, Amir saw the soul of a nation. That simple exchange, a moment of genuine connection between strangers, meant more to him than any treaty or official agreement he had ever signed. It was a reminder that diplomacy begins with understanding, and that the smallest gestures can bridge the widest divides. As Amir left the Philippines, suitcase in hand and heart full, he realized he was no longer just a diplomat representing his country. He had become a student of humanity, forever changed by the warmth and generosity he had witnessed. He learned that a nation's true power does not lie in its wealth or military might, but in the spirit of its people. The everyday acts of kindness, the willingness to help a neighbor, and the sense of community were the real treasures he discovered. Kindness, cooperation, and hope. These were the country's greatest assets, quietly shaping the future in ways that statistics could never measure. When Amir wrote his final report to Tehran, it became more than just an analysis of political or economic conditions. It was a heartfelt testament to the strength he had witnessed in the Filipino people. He argued that true strength is found in grace and humanity, especially in a world that can often seem harsh and unforgiving. The resilience and compassion he observed were qualities that every nation should aspire to. The world, he wrote, needs more of the Filipino spirit, a spirit defined by joy, unity, and an unbreakable sense of hope. Iran's admiration, Amir realized, was not rooted in politics or alliances, but in a deep respect for the people themselves and the values they embodied. The most valuable resource any nation can possess is the character of its citizens, their integrity, their kindness, and their unwavering spirit. Through Amir's eyes, a new understanding was forged, one that transcended borders and differences and celebrated the universal language of humanity. In the end, it was clear. The quiet strength of a kind and resilient people can be the most powerful force of all, lighting the way for nations everywhere.